All right, me and brother Umar, we was at the Audubon Ballroom Sunday, and brother Umar gave a powerful presentation.
You wanna see it?
Do you wanna see it?
You wanna see it? Do you wanna see it?
Do you wanna see it?
Do you wanna see it? Do you wanna see it?
Do you wanna see it?
Do you wanna see it?
Nah, they don't wanna see
Do
it.
you wanna see it?
All right, I'm gonna do it for you.
I'm gonna do it for you. I'm gonna do it for you.
For the hereafter. So if you have individuals who are focused on the hereafter, and they're in the same movement with individuals who are focused on the political and economic reality of the here and now, there's naturally going to be a clash. You see the same clash right now in the conscious community and with the religious community, where a lot of conscious brothers and sisters don't deal with the Sunni Islamic movement. They don't deal with the Baptist Christian movement. They don't deal with certain Afro-Asiatic or African-American or African continental movements because of their focus on the hereafter. Religion is fundamentally optimistic and futuristic. Religion is fundamentally optimistic and futuristic, which means religion is always going to give the enemy the benefit of the doubt, because religion teaches the essential good nature of humanity.
That's right.
And because religion teaches the essential good nature of humanity, it has been used to confuse Africans into believing that they can coexist with their enemy.
So what do you say to those people, and I heard them many times, and I defended you, how people would say, well, brother, your name is Umar Abdullah Johnson. How is you talking all this red, black, and green, but you got the Arab's name on your back, or you got a slave master name? What do you say to that?
That's a very good question. I would say the reason why my name is what it is because that's what my father named me. That was his consciousness at the time. I was not born Umar, I was actually born Jermaine. My mother named me after Jermaine Jackson of the Jackson 5, who was her #1 singer during the time of my birth. When they were married, my father changed my name to what it is today. So my mother gave me a European name, my father gave me an Islamic name, or should I say an Arabic name, but that only reflects the consciousness of where they are, and I don't blame them for that.
Right.
You ask me why I don't change it now. I would say I don't change my name for the same reason Marcus Garvey didn't change his name. I don't change my name for the same reason Amos Wilson didn't change his name. I don't change my name for the same reason that Bobby Wright didn't change his name. For the same reason that Professor John Henry Clark didn't change his name. Because we are Pan-African nationalists, and we are not concerned with the outward appearance of things. We are only concerned with a true revolutionary transformation in the quality of life and state of affairs for African people. You can look at the cultural nationalist community. They got the dashikis, they got the names, they got the lots, they got Egyptology down to a science, but where's their industries? Where's their institutions? Where's their innovations? They don't. So one day, will I consider changing my name? I might. Do I consider it to be important? Absolutely not. Why am I not going to change it? Because to change my name right now would give the false appearance that progress is being made. It's going to stay Umar Abdullah Johnson. And when African people finally create that independent nation to be centered on the continent, as Mr. Garvey sought out to do, then I'll change my name once the red, black, and green has been planted on the mountaintops of Africa. But like Dr. Wilson, a Pan-Africanist, like John Henry Clark, a Pan-Africanist, like Bobby Wright, a Pan-Africanist, we could care less about the names that we were given because we're trying to change the conditions under which we are living.
Beautiful, beautiful. How does it feel, my brother, to be standing right next to the man?
Well, it feels very good. Me and Malcolm got a lot in common. The name he died with ain't the name he was born with. The name I'ma die with ain't gonna be the name I was born with. Okay? He was a Muslim, I'm Muslim. He's a Pan-Africanist, I'm a Pan-Africanist. He believes in separating the religion from the politics, I believe in separating the religion from the politics. You know, so there's a lot of commonalities there, probably a few differences too, but I'm not gonna highlight those. You know, but the one thing about Brother Malcolm that kind of inspires me was his sincerity. We've had a lot of good orators. We've had a lot of good thinkers. He wasn't the first good orator. He wasn't the first good thinker. He wasn't the first prominent Pan-Africanist, but he was sincere. And if there's one thing that separates Malcolm from many of those of today, the new leadership, as you will, they're not sincere. Many of them are motivated by status, by ego, by fame, by money, by power, by control. But Malcolm was sincere. Both Malcolm and Dr. King, despite what people may think of them, they took a vow of poverty. They took a vow of poverty. And they said, if I have to die broke in order for progress to be made for my race, that's exactly what I'll do. Brother Umar Johnson has taken a vow of poverty. I'm a psychologist, I'm an educator, I'm a political scientist. I can get rich, but the work and message that I do is not traveling down the road that's going to get you rich. Okay, it's traveling down the road that'll get you somewhere else that we're not even going to mention. But that's what we do.
Now, when you meet other brothers, because we know that there's different sects of Islam.
Yes.
So when you meet other brothers that's fanatics, do they look at you as a Muslim when they hear you speak?
No, they don't.
Right.
In fact, many, I'm not going to say all, because I still have very good relationships with some African brothers in the Sunni Islamic movement. But there's many of them who have kind of kept their distance from me, and I've kind of kept my distance from them. For example, I'm not a regular mosque-going Muslim. Right. You don't catch me in Juma on Friday that often. I go once in a while to politic with my black brothers and sisters, but I'm not really an active member of any masjid. And the reason why that is because I don't know of any African or African-American masjid that actually puts as much emphasis on political organization and political change and economic development in the African community than they do on spreading the dogma of their religion. So in other words, if you dedicate yourself totally to the masjid, then you are also, okay, by virtue of doing that, excluding yourself from the conscious community, because there is no consciousness in Sunni Islam. I was raised in it, and I can speak on it. You go to a mosque, you ain't gonna hear nothing about no black culture. In fact, if you bring it up, they'll rebuke you about it. They're not interested in that. And there's a history to that too, because when you study Islam in America, you'll see that when Warithuddin Muhammad, rest in peace to him, when he split with his father's ideology, he went far right with a very, very, very pathologically integrationist form of Islam. And so a lot of the brothers who left the Nation of Islam and followed W.D. Muhammad out of the Nation of Islam, okay, they accepted his integrationist approach to Islam. And I think that was one of the, and none of us are perfect, but I think that was one of the mistakes that W.D. Muhammad made in taking black consciousness almost totally out of Islam. And so today, the average African-American Sunni Muslim wants nothing to do with blackness, nothing to do with his Africanity, nothing to do with consciousness, Pan-Africanism.
But you know what, Brother Umar? I find that not only do the Muslim want nothing to do with that, even the Moors who claim to be Muslim too. There's a lot of Moorish brothers that will tell you, no, I'm not black, I don't deal with the African stuff.
Exactly. Okay. Well, here's the thing. The Moors are not a homogenous group, and so I wouldn't want to lump them. Because I know Moors who identify with the Africanity. I know Moors who use the red, black, and green flag. And then I know some Moors who actually exhibit the same mindset that you just spoke of, where they are anti-Africanity.
Right.
So for the ones who are totally anti-Africanity, I can't get down with that.
Yeah, you're right. Not all of them is like that. You're
exactly.
Right.
Not all of them are like that. Exactly. You know, and there's a lot of deep thinking, positive brothers in the Moorish movement. So you got to kind of categorize. You know, but here's the issue. Anything that takes me away from who I am, I can't be involved with it. Anything that takes me away from who I am, I can't be involved with it. And one of the big problems with religion, and this is why Brother Malcolm always said, leave religion at home. One of the big problems with religion is the way it's been taught. See, everything is neutral. Everything is neutral. It's how you use it. But the way religion has been taught to black people is to make them think that it's supposed to replace their culture, which is one of the biggest misinformations we've learned in our sojourn in America. You can't take 2 billion years of African culture and exchange it, okay, for 1,500 years of Islam or 2,000 years of Christianity. Who in their right mind would give $2 billion for $2,000? It doesn't make sense. But religion wasn't even designed to replace culture. Religion was only designed to replace culture when religion was used as a weapon by conquerors and invaders to colonize the people. That's when they started exchanging religion for culture. Prior to religion becoming a handmaiden of conquerors, you could have your culture and you could have your religion. You see, but with the rise of white supremacy, religion became another tool. So you send in the missionary and then you send in the military. They do the same thing in the black community today. They send in the faith-based initiative money to the black churches and the black masjids, a program that was engineered by former President George Bush, where he found a way to give religious institutions tax dollars. So now we have the FBI, the new FBI, faith-based initiative. So they send the money in, and then once you take the money, they then send in the political agenda. For example, you hardly find any black church verbally opposed to the homosexual assault on the black community. 50 years ago, ministers would be in the street protesting against homosexuality. But now that they're getting that money, everybody's quiet on the issue. You cannot take your enemy's money and use it to fight your enemy.
According to your understanding of Islam, being that you've been in it all your life, do you see racism in Islam?
Of course there's racism.
And if so, how come the rest of our brothers don't see it? Are they, I mean, because you can talk to the average Muslim brother from America, I ain't talking about our African brothers, but they refuse to see it, brother. They look at everybody as their brother.
Exactly.
A white man could come here and say,
Exactly.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Exactly.
And they'll automatically get brainwashed thinking that this is my brother because he got the Quran, he read the Quran,
Exactly.
he pray like me, so he's my brother. They are oblivious to this, brother.
Well, the reason why that is, Brother SaNeter, is because in the post-slavery era, most black people have been taught that their religious identity supersedes their racial identity. The average black child is taught that, whether they're Christian, Muslim, Hebrew, regardless of the faith, they're taught to identify primarily with religion. Race is either secondary or totally non-important. So as the African baby grows up, they see themselves as a Muslim only, as a Christian only. I always give the parable that if you line up three people, three children, and one of them is Chinese, and one of them is English, okay, from the United Kingdom, and you line up a Negro child and you ask them who they are, the Chinese man, who may be a Muslim, is going to say, I'm Chinese. The English child, who might be a Christian, is going to say, I'm English, I'm Jewish, I'm Italian, I'm French. And the Negro will say, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Hebrew. Why is it everybody identifies with the race first, the culture, but us? Because the slave master and the colonizer took away your culture and gave you religion and made you content with the colonizer's interpretation of your faith. So what we have to do, going back to Garvey, going back to what Malcolm taught coming from Marcus Garvey, we have to start raising our children with an African consciousness. If you want to give them religion, make sure they keep it secondary. But religion is not more important than race. It never has been, and it never will be. When Muslims of other races come to America, they use the numerical numbers of African American Muslims to gain a political and economic foothold, Brother SaNeter. I see it. They use them to get the gas stations. They use their know-how so they can build the supermarkets, and then they don't do nothing for the Africans who they just use to help them get an economic or political foothold here in the United States. That's because of religious identity. Get rid of the religious identity and pick up race first. Marcus Garvey said, quote, in a world of wolves, one should go armed. And one of the most powerful defensive weapons in the reach of Negroes is the practice of race first in all parts of the world. Marcus Garvey said if we would just put our race first, we would solve half of our problems. But most of us identify with our fraternity, with the Masonic Lodge, with our sorority, with our religion, with our skin complexion, with the college that we graduated from, with our particular profession. Look at the black bourgeoisie. Most of them identify with their profession and their status. They don't deal with race at all. And so what we have to do, again, raise the children to be Africans first and members of religion second. And if we can't do it, if we cannot put race before religion, then get rid of religion altogether. Because there is absolutely no proof in the post-slavery era to show that any religion, any of them, have benefited the political and economic progress of black people. Not a single one.
Beautiful, brother. Thank you, Brother Umar.
But I'm going to tell you, man, like I was saying, I got a strong soldier brother out there in Syracuse. See, y'all don't know who I know, man. I got a soldier out there in Syracuse. He stand, I don't know, I think he's 5'11" or something like that, 6'11", or 7-0, I don't know, but the brother's a big brother, and he out there giving this information to the hands and minds of our people. When the brother saw Brother Abdullah Johnson's video, because I gave it to him when he came down to New York, man, don't you know, Brother Baba called me and said, man, I just made 20 videos or more and just passed them out to the people because he was blown away. So the people all up in Syracuse is loving this brother right here, man. You hear me?
Man, listen, well, when you going to bring him into New York, man, let him come on down, man, give it away down here.
Believe me, we're working on that right now. So with no further ado, I want to bring on a mighty soldier, a powerful brother, and I guarantee you, he ain't just going to be up here talking. Y'all going to learn something. Get your pens and papers ready for Brother Umar Abdul Johnson. He's the president, National Movement to Save Black Boys, nationally certified school psychologist. Okay? So let's bring on the brother. Peace. What's going on, my brother Abdullah Johnson?
Peace and blessings, SaNeter. It's a pleasure to be on your show this evening.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure to have you, brother. I'm just so happy. I got this DVD from a brother by the name of A.A. Rashid. We was out at a festival, and I was looking through his bag. He said, go ahead and look, and I seen it, and I said, man, I got to check this out. And when I popped it in, I was blown away. I was like, wow, this brother is going straight off the head. He ain't reading no notes. It's like it's already in his mind already. He know what he got to say. He know what he got to do for our people. You hear me, brother?
That's good to know, beloved. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I'm glad to be on the radio show. And right from the gate, I just want to put it on out there. Our black boys are under attack, and they are under attack because we are suffering from a lack of information as it regards to protecting their best interests. There is 5 stages in the cycle of destruction that this system has designed and implemented to exterminate black men from the face of the earth, and particularly in these United States. Those 5 stages are: 1, miseducation; 2, psychotropic medication; 3, incarceration; 4, frustration; and 5, extermination.
Okay, my brother, that's what's up. First of all, before I get started, I would like for you to introduce yourself to the people and give them your credentials. What makes you qualified to talk about this powerful topic, brother?
My name is Umar Abdullah Johnson. I am a nationally certified school psychologist. I am also a certified kindergarten through 12th grade principal. I'm currently completing my doctoral dissertation in clinical psychology. I have 2 bachelor's degrees, one in political science, another in psychology. I have 3 master's degrees, one in educational leadership, the second in school psychology, the third in clinical psychology. As I mentioned, 3 certifications: principal, school psychology, and nationally certified school psychologist, and I am a blood relative of Frederick Douglass. I specialize in evaluating and diagnosing African-American children to keep them out of special education if they do not need it, and to put them in for the few who are in need of the service. It is my job to educate parents, to educate the community so they understand educational law, special ed procedure, and the illegal discipline practices that school districts enter in all across this country, illegally expelling and suspending black boys from school every day.
All right, that's peace, brother. All right. The first question I have for you, brother, I watched the DVD, so I said we got to have some powerful questions for the brother. The first question I have for you, my brother, is how is special education being used to oppress black boys?
Excellent question. In order to understand special education, we have to take a look back in time. We have to go back to the year 1954 when the Brown versus Board of Education decision was handed down by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court stated that racism or race could no longer be used as a segregating factor in public education. As a result of that, white folks then started a mentally gifted movement. Believe it or not, the mentally gifted movement was an outgrowth, a reaction to the Brown versus Board of Education decision. And through the mentally gifted movement, white children were once again segregated away from black children, this time not because of race, but because of presumed intelligence. Now, fast forward to 1963. In Chicago, a white psychologist creates a diagnosis called the learning disability. The learning disability. It is no coincidence that the learning disability was created 1 year prior to the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Why? Once again, to come up with a legally acceptable premise upon which you could segregate black children from white children. So instead of saying that they were black, you can now say that they had a disability in their ability to learn. Fast forward again to 1975. First of all, there is no special education in America prior to 1975. There is no special ed until 1975. In 1975, the United States Congress passed Public Law 94-142, the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. That is what gave birth to special education. Prior to that time, if you were a student with a disability, you were simply told not to come to school. But Public Law 94-142, which helped white kids, hurt black kids, because now they start taking normal black children who did not have learning disabilities, who were not retarded, who were not autistic, who did not have emotional disturbances, and they start saying they did just so they could segregate them from the white children. And that practice continues today.
Powerful. All right, brother. As I was watching the DVD, I heard you said something that stuck to my mind, man, that was so powerful. And whoever got it, you got the, I know y'all remember this when the brother said homosexuality. I'm jumping ahead of myself, but we're going to get to that. I just want to say this.
It's all related.
Homosexuality. We don't know that they are teaching our children that when they are yay high, because we don't look at the books that they read because they don't bring the books home. So they teaching them about that in the literature that they are reading in school. How so is that, brother?
Well, we have to, again, go back to the 1970s. The 1970s are so key because you're looking at the first decade after the Civil Rights struggle. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger in 1974 published a national security memorandum. He recommended as one of the major strategies to control black population growth in America. Henry Kissinger said that one of the best ways that we can control black population growth in America is by the open advocacy and propagation of homosexuality in the black community. The homosexuality that we see going on rapidly amongst our young people is not a coincidence. They are not born that way. It is something that has been propagated and promoted by the United States government and the National Security Agency in particular to do what? Destabilize the black community. Remember what J. Edgar Hoover said. The goal is to prevent the rise of a black messiah who could electrify the militant black nationalist movement. It gets deeper than that, Brother SaNeter, because the current psychotropic drug movement against black boys, the so-called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, the so-called oppositional defiant disorder, the so-called conduct disorder, the so-called disruptive behavior disorder was created also as a tool to docilely and pacify the revolutionary young black male mind. The reason why black males are given drugs is to prevent them from becoming the next Malcolm X, the next Marcus Garvey, the next Dr. King. Drugs are being used to pacify black males and effeminize them. They're even putting estrogen in the anti-psychotropic drugs.
Powerful, powerful. I can't wait to interview you, brother, on video, man. All right, check this out. Question number 3 or 2 I have is, what are disruptive behavior disorders, and does ADHD have its origin in eugenics?
Yes, it does. In fact, all of psychology is an outgrowth of eugenics. For example, the word IQ, intelligence quotient, is an outgrowth of the German eugenics movement. Its founder was a European by the name of Wilhelm Stern, who used to work with Adolf Hitler. Let me say this again. Intelligence quotient as a concept was created during the German eugenics movement by a scientist who worked with Adolf Hitler. And we are running around wondering why black children consistently underperform white and Asian children by 15 points, because the test was racist from the beginning. Now, in 1980, if we go back in our mental Rolodex, you will remember that there was a lot of headlines in this country, magazines, newspapers, television shows, that was discussing whether or not black males had a gene that predisposed them to violence. Whether or not black males had a gene that predisposed them to violence. When that notion took hold in the American consciousness, black civil rights organizations started pushing back against it because it smelled exactly like what it was, eugenics. So as a result of that, that movement was forced to go underground. But what I want your listening audience to understand was that the movement to prove that black men had a gene that predisposed them to violence was never disintegrated. It went underground and came back to the surface in 1990 as ADHD, CD, ODD. In fact, to quote the United States top psychiatrist at the time, he said, SaNeter, quote, "If you want to control the behavior and emotions of black boys, we should invest in research into monkeys in the African jungle. We can best control black boys by studying the behavior of monkeys in the jungle." And it was that movement that gave birth to the psychotropic drugging of black boys, which is based on this premise right here. Black boys are like animals. They are one step above the animal, one step below the white man. They lack the ability to control their thoughts, their behaviors, and their emotions. Because their brain is underdeveloped, and because they are half animal anyway, if we want to control their emotions and eliminate black-on-black violence, we have to do it psychotropically. In other words, we must pharmacologically control the black man through chemical drugs.
All right, brother. All right, that's powerful, brother. Let me ask you this. Why the Asians score higher on the IQ test? Why do the Asians score higher on the IQ test? Were that designed to favor?
Excellent question. The tests were not designed for Asians to do well. The reason why Asians do well on a test that was designed on middle-class white students is because they overcompensate. In other words, the average Asian student in America spends 12 hours a week studying outside of school. The average middle-class white student spends 8 hours a week studying outside of school. The average Hispanic student spends about 3 or 4 hours a week studying outside of school, and the average Negro child, because basketball, football, Xbox, video games, BET, et cetera, is more important than education, the average black kid spends 1 hour a week studying outside of school. But there is another reason. One thing you have to understand about testing, SaNeter, the reason why there is so much testing going on in our schools is not to make sure black children are learning. The testing is being done to justify the removal of much-needed funds and resources from predominantly black school districts and giving it to white school districts under the auspices that you guys can't keep up. In other words, the schools that need the money the most are being stripped of it because they can't keep up with the white schools. And the reason they can't keep up with the white schools is because they have inferior learning facilities, inferior learning equipment, and they also have the most inferior teachers. For example, we know that the most senior and experienced teachers tend to end up in the richest school districts and in the richest parts of town. The youngest teachers, the ones who are fresh out of college, the ones who are the last or should be the last to be placed in an inner city district are the first to go there. In other words, the kids who need the most help get the least help, and the kids who need the least help get the most help. It is all by design. Public education in America was not designed to educate black children. But let me go one step further. Public education in America wasn't even designed to educate white students. When you look at the original birth of public education in America, and by the way, Thomas Jefferson gave one of the first explanations for why we needed public education. And according to that slave master of over 200 who even sold one of his own half-daughters into slavery, that devil said that we need 2 tracks of education. He said one for those who would rule the society and another for those that would serve. Let me say that again, because some of us have this belief that education is supposed to be equal. It was never designed to be that way. You have to understand we live in a supremacist society. And in a supremacist society, there must be a ruling class and there must be a working class. In other words, you must have a free and available cheap source of labor in order for capitalism to work its magic. So the reason you have public education is so that your son and daughter can't go to college. It's not for college. It's not for trade school. It's not for business. The reason you have public education is so when your child graduates from high school and go and work for one of these rich corporate conglomerates, they can know how to read the language on the buttons. They're not going to be making too much more money than the student who dropped out of high school, but at least they will be a functional illiterate. Public education is about the business of producing functional illiterates, not just for black, but for white as well. For example, the United States of America trails most other industrial nations on any measure of academic proficiency. So if the middle-class white students of America are last in line on the globe, how much further behind is the average black child in America? But we have to understand, because white privilege will allow those white students to still be given a free get-rich card quick. The black child will not get that. So that black boy, when he is miseducated and when he becomes frustrated, he is then exterminated. We cannot look at white public education and expect it to work for black children. As Dr. John Henry Clark, last of the great Pan-African nationalists, said, you can never expect your oppressor to educate you into how to take power away from him.
All right, powerful information, brothers. I hope y'all sucking this up right here, man. Stop being fools in the chat room. Stop being haters in the chat room, because some of you out there say, nah, that's not true. The brother's making up. He got a lot of excuses. Nah, that's not a lot of excuses. The brother is right on point. When he broke down how much black children study, that's real, man. Because we got so many of these things in our way, like the brother said, basketball, Nintendo games, all kind of stuff, the TV. The brother is right on the money, man. So this is the next question I have for you, brother. Is psychotropic drugs an effective treatment for disruptive behavior disorders?
No, they are not. The United States government, at the beginning of the 1960s, pioneered a study, SaNeter. This is documented. The United States government ran a study to see what the long-term effects of psychotropic drug use would be on the black community. And they concluded that the effects of psychotropic drugs on the black community was so successful that they decided to stop drugging the adults and start drugging the children. In other words, we know that the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, which was started by a Wall Street banker, by the way, was designed to oversee the international drug trafficking cartel. As I try to tell African people every day, selling drugs in America is not illegal. Selling drugs in America without the permission of the executive branch of the United States is illegal. The reason why the United States was going to invade Colombia wasn't because they're selling drugs. It's because the Colombians at the time refused to invest their drug profits into Wall Street. So anyway, when they began to drug the black community in the 60s, 70s, and giving us crack in the 80s, it was so effective at destabilizing the black consciousness, the black power movement, that they said if we introduce these drugs at an earlier age, we will never have to fight the adults to begin with. So what you are seeing, SaNeter, is white supremacy at its best. They are preventing the rise of a black messiah by docilating the boy. It's called kill them before they grow. Now, the side effects of psychotropic drugs is nothing short of eugenicidal. Let me give you an example. Every psychotropic drug, Brother SaNeter, every single one, I don't care if it's Ritalin, Prozac, Strattera, Cycler, Adderall, and I could be here all night naming them. Every one kills brain cells on contact. I said they kill brain cells on contact. Now, all drugs are metastasized in the kidney and liver. Do you know what that means? Every time you give a little black boy a pill, you are hitting his liver and his kidney. So if he's taking psychotropics at 5 years old, and he's still taking them at 15 years old, by the time he's 20, he might have to go to dialysis. And it's not because he was eating chicken wings from the Korean. It's because his educationally illiterate mother, father, or guardian allowed them to pump chemicals into their child's stomach. And the interesting thing about psychotropics, Brother SaNeter, do you know that 95% of the psychotropic drugs that we prescribe black boys in America are illegal to be prescribed to children in the United Kingdom? You cannot give children Ritalin in the United Kingdom. It is illegal. The reason why they are giving it to our children, because they are destroying their ability to reproduce themselves in adulthood. Let me say that again. Ritalin is chemically equivalent to the street drug that we call speed. Ritalin is methylphenidate. Speed is methylphenidate. What's the difference? Nothing. It is the title on the drug label. And so as a result, if you give a black boy Ritalin in a public school or at the doctor's office, it's totally legal. But if I catch you, SaNeter, selling speed out on the street, you might get a mandatory 5 to 10 under the Rockefeller drug laws. What's the difference? Somebody wants to find power as the ability to do what? Define reality and make people accept it.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yo, let me tell the Negro something right now. If you're not a Negro, then it don't apply to you. Any Negro want to come up in my chat room and start talking stupid, silly nigger stuff, you're getting kicked out. I'm going to give you 1 strike or 2 strikes. I already kicked the Negro out because the nigger said I'm asking the brother soft questions. See, what they want to hear is arguing and bickering every goddamn night. But I'm not. Now we got a powerful soldier here that's willing to give us this powerful information, not for no money, for free. And you Negroes in the chat room, not all of you. I'm not talking about all you brothers, because there's a lot of you brothers in there being respectful, coming up with some powerful texting. The Negro know who I'm talking about. I already kicked him out. I asked the brother a question that he asked me, and then the nigga want to still ask stupid-ass dumb questions, talking about the brother don't know what he's talking about. So now I kicked the nigga out, because we ain't going to have that today. You see, there's a difference between a black man and a nigga. That's why I keep using that term. A lot of y'all don't like when I say nigga, but see, it was a nigga who killed Malcolm, not a black man. I'm making a clear distinction here. It is niggas who try to stop the rise of a black messiah, who try to stop this information and knowledge from spreading to the masses of black children. This brother here is saving black young boys, and you Negroes out there talking silliness. So you will be kicked out the chat room. Simple as that. So now, my brother, I want to go to one more question before I let Brother Seville on, because Seville wrote some questions down, or he got it in his head too for you, brother.
Sure.
Question I have for you is, why isn't, since you talked about the black kids and the lack of studying, so why isn't public education working for black children?
Number one, if you get any American education textbook on education and its history, you will find that education predominantly was created and implemented to socialize the masses to the thinking that the government wished for them. Let me say that again. The chief purpose of education is to socialize. For example, Your son probably can't read, but he knows the Pledge of Allegiance by heart. He probably can't do math, but he can recite the entire Star-Spangled Banner. Probably can't even write his name, but he can tell you who the first president of the United States was. The goal of public education is to teach children what to think, not how to think. That's not just for us, that's for everybody, but even so much more so for us. Number two, the second goal of American public education is for the proper selection of leadership who will continue to upkeep the status quo. So public education for black people is about socializing black males to sell out their own race. When you look at many of those of us who are highest placed in governmental positions, you will find that they were identified early on in life, that they were supervised, that they were mentored to become exactly what it is they became, whether it was President of the United States, whether you were chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, or even if you was one of these Negro leaders running around. The bottom line is they use education to find which black males and females can be best used to further the agenda of white supremacy. So, knowing that, we have to understand, with the black boy being public enemy number one, that if we want to properly educate him, we must do so ourselves. People always say, what happens to the black boy in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, Brother Umar? Why was he A's, B's, and C's in the kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and then he drops the D's and F's? It's because the white teacher who was teaching him, and by the way, 93% of all teachers in America are white, and 95% of them are white women. So you have white women teaching black boys. And I hope we don't have to go into the history of slavery and all of the myths that white women and white men held about the sexual uncontrollability of black boys. But anyhow, when the black boy reaches 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, he begins to transform into a man. And once his voice deepens, once the facial hair comes, once his athleticism begins to develop, the white woman then backs off of him. She no longer sees him as sweet little Raheem, who is in kindergarten. She's now looking at him as a sexually uncontrollable and the intellectually unteachable black menace to society.
All right. Hey, Brother Seville, I thought about it, but I want to get through these questions right quick because you might go right into something that I have. But just be patient, Seville. We got the brother for 2 hours. Okay, here's another one, brother. What is a school psychologist? What is a school psychiatrist?
Now, first we have to understand that there are all types of psychologists. There's clinical psychologists. There's counseling psychologists. There's industrial psychologists. There's forensic psychologists. There's university psychologists. And then there's school psychologists. Now, let me first say this. Less than 1% of all school psychologists in America are black. Let me say it again. Less than 1% of all school psychologists in America are black. Now you can begin to understand why so many of our children are prematurely referred and diagnosed with special education disabilities, and I hope we get into the Sweet 13 special education disabilities, which are not to be confused with mental disorders. But a school psychologist is called the gatekeeper of special education. The reason we are called the gatekeeper is because it is our responsibility to evaluate children who are referred to us to determine whether or not they have one of the 13 special education disabilities, and if they do, they then qualify for special education. But the reason why we have to be careful about putting our black children, male or female, but particularly male, in special education is because special education becomes the highway to dropping out. Special education becomes the highway to delinquency. Special education becomes the highway to functional illiteracy. And let me explain briefly how that happens, Brother SaNeter. I evaluate your son, and I say he has a specific learning disability, SLD, in basic reading skill, BRS. So your son is SLD and BRS. And I then say say in my psychological evaluation report that he is now eligible for special education. Once your son is eligible for special education, he is no longer held to the standard of the other children. He gets what is called an IEP, Individual Education Program. Let's say that you and I are both in the 12th grade. We are taught on a GEC, General Education Curriculum. Once your son goes into special ed, he gets an IEP, Individual Education Program, that is specific to your son's needs. What is the problem with that? The problem is the goals and the objectives and the expectations for your son once he goes into special ed will no longer be what his peers is. So he's in 3rd grade today, SaNeter. By the time he gets to 8th grade 5 years from now, when all of his peers are reading on 8th grade, your son might still be reading on the 3rd grade level. There has never been one outcome study on the effectiveness of special ed. Now, let me also give you this, because you're probably going to say, well, if special ed ain't working, and if it's a highway to prison and a highway to dropout, why so many black kids keep on going? Let me break it down to you real quick. There's 3 reasons why parents like special ed, Negro parents. There's 3 reasons why schools like special ed, and there's 3 reasons why teachers like special ed. Listen to me well. Why do parents like it? Number 1, special education is grade appropriate. That means if you are a lazy parent who does not like to work with your children, you never, ever have to worry about your child repeating any grade again for the rest of their school career. In other words, your 3rd grade son will be promoted to 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. In 6 years, he'll be graduating with a high school diploma but can't read or write a damn thing. Number 2 reason why parents like special ed. A special education child in the United States of America cannot be suspended for more than 10 days out of the school year. Let me say it again. A special education student in the United States of America cannot be suspended for more than 50 days out of a school year. So if you are a parent and you don't have control over your son's discipline, and you don't want to keep being called out of work to run up to the school to deal with something that the teacher should have been able to deal with, then you want special ed because what? It serves as job security for the parent. And it also serves as a check for parents who don't want to work hard for their children. And what's the last reason that parents like special education? The last reason that parents like special ed is because once that child is diagnosed with one of the 13 educational disabilities, which I'm sure we'll get into later, the parent can now apply for Social Security income for that child based on the disability. So if you are a Negro parent who could care less about whether or not your child is going to graduate knowing how to be functional in society, you want special ed. He has to be passed on. He has to graduate. He cannot be suspended more than 10 days, and I can get a check. Now let's move to the teachers. Why do teachers like special ed? 3 reasons. Number 1, they get that badass boy out of their classroom because he's now in the special ed classroom. So the first reason is convenience. He's out of my damn way. Number 2, if the teacher is not teaching and if that student is not making measurable progress, she can blame it on his what? His disability. And number 3, the reason why the teacher likes special education is because the more the child struggles, the more special education he gets. Which means that if she continues to complain about his ability to make progress, she can ultimately get him secluded from her class every day, all day, in a full-time special ed placement. Now, why does school districts like special ed? I'm going to sum their 3 reasons up into one, Brother SaNeter, and this is going to blow your audience's mind. The main reason why school districts like special education, the main reason why you do not see a single serious school district in the United States of America doing anything about stopping the over-identification of black men for special education is because they get money every time Brother Umar says one of these boys has a disability. Let me say it again. As soon when I diagnose your son as mentally retarded or autistic, or specific learning disability, or emotionally disturbed, or deaf, or blind, or traumatic brain injury, or other health impairment, or multiple disabilities, the minute I say your son needs special ed, Brother SaNeter, the school district gets approximately $7,000 on top of the regular per pupil annual allotment. So if I put your third grade son in special ed, he's not graduating until 12th grade. That means he got 9 more years of public school. 9 years times 7,000 is $63,000. Putting black boys in special ed is an extra source of revenue for low-income school districts.
Damn, did y'all hear that, family? Now, don't tell me that this is not powerful information. I want to say black power to my brother Sean Bay. Sean Bay is out there in Newark, in Jersey, doing the work. I mean, wow, this brother here is dropping some heavy, heavy stuff on us, brothers and sisters. So I'm quite sure all of us got children, and like one of the brothers said in the chat room, we need to stop dropping these seeds without being responsible for them. Because what we do as men is we drop the seeds, and we're not really being a father to our children. So the brother is right, and I agree with everything the brother is saying right now. I don't disagree. Why? Because this brother has inside information. He knows. This is his strong point. This is what the brother do. You see what I'm saying? So let me ask the brother another thing. We as black people always looking for someone to free us. Every time something goes wrong in the black community, if the white man shoots down our people, you'll see the Negro leaders coming out. Al Sharpton, Calvin Butts, all these Negroes come out because there's money involved in that. But when we do it, kill ourselves, black-on-black violence, you don't see the moral outcry of these so-called leaders in the community. You don't see a nigga like Al Sharpton in the community. He don't come out because, see, it ain't no money involved in that. How you going to get paid off of black-on-black violence, Al Sharpton? But, see, if the white man does it, you're going to get paid because you're going to take him to court, you're going to sue the system, you're going to sue. You see, so here's my question for you, brother, is that what is your opinion of black leadership, so-called black leadership?
Let me first say this so the audience is crystal clear, okay? I am a Pan-African nationalist. I am a Garveyite. That is my square. That is where I stand. And I do not believe that since the assassination of Dr. King, although I did not totally agree with his principles, but since his assassination, it is sad to say, in my opinion, I haven't seen a leader. I haven't seen one who I can consider 100% sincere. I didn't say there wasn't 50% or 75%. I said I don't know of one who I would consider to be 100% sincerely committed to black people. See, in order to understand black leadership, Brother SaNeter, you have to understand that there's two groups of black people. There are the black masses, you and I. And then there is the EBC, elitist black clique, a.k.a. black bourgeoisie. Now, the problem with black leadership is that most black leaders don't belong to the masses. They belong to the black leadership bourgeoisie clique. In other words, most black leaders are millionaires. That does not make them wrong. But when you are used to a certain level of comfort in your life, you cannot struggle as hard as when you lived in the hood. When you are used to a certain standard of living, you're not necessarily willing to stick your neck out on the line as you may have been when you were a little bit younger. So what I'm saying is we have to raise up a new generation of black leadership who are willing to commit themselves totally to the community and not necessarily get involved in black leadership for profit, because, Brother SaNeter, in case you haven't seen it, black leadership is the most profitable business in America. There is no other business where you can tell people what they need to know and charge them for it and get rich without never putting any of your words into practice.
That's real right there, brother. That is real, man. Let me move on, because I know the brother Seville have questions. I want to get through this, brother Seville. I got a couple of more for the brother. What is post-traumatic slave disorder? I know the viewers out there think they know, and we have our own idea, but let me ask the doctor. What is post-traumatic slave disorder, brother?
Okay. First, there is two theories in circulation. One is posed by the good sister, Dr. Joyce Leary, post-traumatic slave syndrome, PTSS. That's Dr. Leary. I don't want anyone to confuse that with mine. I am post-traumatic slave disorder, okay? Now, there's not a big difference between a syndrome or a disorder, okay? But at least you can categorically separate whose particular philosophy you are expounding upon. She is PTSS, I am PTSD, and I'm working on the book as we speak, Post-Traumatic Slavery Disorder 1.5, Return of the Slaves. Post-traumatic slave disorder is a psychological phenomenon that is born out of trauma based on the ma'afa or the experience of slavery in America and colonialism in Africa, which has left the African intellectually and spiritually punch-drunk to the point where they cannot help but love the same hand that smacks them and hate the people who they see in the community every day. To make it really, really basic, blunt, and plain, post-traumatic slavery disorder is the science of making the victim a willing accomplice in their own extermination. Let me say that again. It is the process of making the victim a willing accomplice in their own extermination. In other words, you can take the slave out of slavery anytime you want, SaNeter, but until the slave takes slavery out of their soul, they will never be free.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Moving right along. All right, brother. We're going to switch gears. Y'all ready for this? Here it comes. Why is there so much homosexuality in the black community, brother?
Understand that the roots of homosexuality go back to slavery, the antebellum times. Remember, when you study the 13 colonies, you will find that one of the most committed offenses on the part of white males was that of raping and molesting other white males. That automatically carried over to the slaves. See, understand this. The black man's development and growth has always been stunted in this country. Your masculinity, your ability to stand up and flex your intellectual and spiritual muscle has never been totally allowed. So from the beginning of life, the black male is already being put through a process of feminization. From the day he is born, black manhood has largely been made of feminizing. That is one of the major reasons why many black women don't put the type of confidence that they need to into black men, because they understand, or they can see, that we are not able to fulfill our obligations as a man as much as the European because of the systematic constraint that is put upon us. If a black man is really going to fully develop his manhood, he has to do so in the face of white supremacy, which means he has to do so in the face of a constant risk to his survival in this country. So when you look at most of our black leaders from back in the day, you will see that they took the chance of standing up and realizing their manhood no matter what the cost. But most black men are not made that way. Most of our boys are not going to be made that way. They are being effeminized. And because they grow up in homes that are largely led by women, the effeminization process continues, because the role model in the house is not the man who they need to be, but the woman who they are choosing to emulate. And we also have to understand, too, SaNeter, from a pathological standpoint, childhood molestation in the black community is a very big issue, brother. It is a very big issue. I get at least 5 phone calls a week of another child who's being molested by the mother's boyfriend or even the preacher at church. And I'm not talking the Roman Catholic Church. I'm talking about the black community church. Our children are being molested. And one thing we know, psychologically speaking, that when a boy or a girl is molested at a young age, that first sexual experience destabilizes the spirit in the mind, and they continue to crave that same type of homosexual experience even though they hate it, which is why homosexuals in the black community have one of the highest suicide rates in the country, which is why I tell brothers and sisters all the time, I am not for homosexuality. We must stand up against it regardless of what President Obama thinks. We are not for that. That is not our culture, but at the same time, we cannot get to the point where we start murdering and assassinating black homosexuals, because I believe, and I have seen some of them brothers and sisters reverse and revolutionize their lives back to the natural order of things in which God gave them. So we cannot give up on them. Understand, post-traumatic slavery disorder takes on all types of forms. Homosexuality is one form. The drug dealer is another form. The sister who can't respect black men is another form. The black man who marries a white woman is another form. There are all types of manifestations of post-traumatic slavery disorder. So unless we're going to throw every baby out with the bathwater, I don't recommend throwing none of them out with the bathwater, but we must stand strong. Homosexuality will not be condoned in our community.
There you go, brother. And that's one of the problems, is that we went along with white folks and we started accepting these things in our community. You know, I used to always stand out on the street and tell our people, when we see like some faggots or homos walking down the street holding hands, I make sure I do my best to break that up, because that's one of the things I don't want my son to see walking in our so-called community, and we accept this stuff like it's all right. But see, brother, what do you say, because I hear this all the time when I'm out there in the street speaking, what do you say to our brother and sister when they tell you they was born that way? What do you say to them?
Number one, this is the first thing that I would say, and I actually had a very, very passionate discussion with a female lesbian professor at a historically black college and university several months ago on this issue. There is no evidence, or let me take the word evidence back, because evidence can be construed many different ways. There is no absolute proof that shows that homosexuality is genetic. Remember, Brother SaNeter, back in 1970, up until the early 80s, homosexuality was considered a mental disorder in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It was a mental condition. They took it out after the homosexual organizations lobbied Congress to do so, partly because many psychotherapists were homosexual themselves. So how can the mentally ill help the mentally ill when they need help themselves? So the reason homosexuality was deregulated as a mental disorder wasn't because they found out that it was no longer classified as such, but it was politically expedient to do so. Now, there not only is there not proof that anyone is born that way, there is enormous proof that homosexuals are socialized to be that way. They are molested in childhood, which sends them in that direction. And then the third piece that we also have to look at, the absence of black men from the homes is also triggering homosexual thoughts and desires, because when the black woman never sees her father, and when the black woman is taught by her black mother that men ain't S-H-I-T, she may make up her mind that she no longer wants to spend her life with a man because they ain't nothing. She wants to spend her life with a woman. The same thing works with the boy. When the boy hears nothing good about black manhood, when his father, who has never spent one day with him, is treated like he's less than nothing. And when he hear all the women, because our boys are around women more than they are men, and he's constantly hearing women talk negatively about black manhood, he may grow to hate men because of the absenteeism of his own father, and he might decide that he don't want to spend his life as a man because it's too insulting. He would rather spend his life as a female. And that's why when you see a lot of homosexual men, they are proudly effeminate. Proudly so. Because the pride is in being a woman. There is no pride in being a black man as far as they are concerned.
Yes, sir, brother. Powerful information. Moving right along. Why is there so much black-on-black violence, my brother?
3 causes. There's 3 causes of black-on-black violence. Number 1, miseducation. Number 2, economic castration. Number 3, self-hatred. Now, when a child is miseducated, which means that he is improperly prepared for society, when he goes out into society, he develops frustration and hopelessness. Hopelessness turns into anger. And when that hopelessness turns into anger, it then solidifies into rage. And so one day you're coming out the store, Brother SaNeter, and I'm walking into the store, and you bump me the wrong way, and I pull up my gat and blow your brains out. Most people would say, well, that was just a brother who was out of his mind. Nobody will trace the root of my anger and rage, my emotional sensitivity, to the fact that I am living a life that I consider worthless, hopeless, and I don't see any way of changing it around. Let's talk about the economic castration. One thing we have to understand about black men, SaNeter, rarely is a senseless homicide committed by a black man who has a job that allows him to take care of his family. When I go to the prisons and speak, and I speak at prisons in Pennsylvania and New Jersey all the time, none of the brothers I'm coming across, or should I say very few of the brothers I'm coming across, had jobs, were proud men who were given an opportunity to look out for their children and their families. Those are not the ones committing the crimes. The ones committing the crimes are the ones who was miseducated through special ed, thrown out of school, because, by the way, there is no such thing as a dropout rate. There is no such thing as a dropout rate. There is only a push-out rate. Our boys are told not to come back to school. In fact, in most states, they can legally stop coming to school, and if a certain child, if the child hasn't been to school in a certain amount of time, once they hit the 10th grade, you can drop them from the road, and you ain't even got to send a truancy officer out. The whole system is designed to make sure our boys don't graduate. But getting back to the point, when a young man is not given an opportunity to earn a living, he then has to go to the underground and sell the CIA's drugs. And you know that in selling the CIA's drugs, because there's no respect on the street anymore, okay, that can automatically lead to one's premature death. Now, at the root of the problem is not selling drugs. He didn't die because he sold drugs. He was killed because he wasn't given a job by the same society that miseducated him. Education and economic opportunity will cut the homicide rate in half. Now, there's another population we got to talk about, Brother SaNeter. Most mental scientists, most behavioral scientists will agree that about 25% of all violent crime in the black community can be traced to what? The deinstitutionalization of the mentally ill. Brother SaNeter, a lot of these brothers out here committing homicides would have normally received professional psychiatric help inside of an inpatient facility for about 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or longer. But because many state mental health hospitals have been closed and those funds have been transmuted into the prison system, in order for you to get any kind of psychiatric help, you got to get arrested first. I am saying that much of the homicide that we are seeing is based on miseducation, economic castration, and the last point, self-hatred. We as a people absolutely hate ourselves. As you and I spoke about the other day, brother, post-traumatic slavery disorder is a psycho-spiritual disorder. Why am I saying that? Because some of us in the conscious community think, Brother SaNeter, and you'll agree with this, some of us in the conscious community think because we changed our name, locked our hair, read a couple books, think we know something about black history, now all of a sudden we are spiritually free. We are psychologically free. That is a damn lie. A psychological problem can only be overcome with psychotherapy. Studying Egypt doesn't get rid of post-traumatic slavery disorder. Locking your hair doesn't get rid of post-traumatic slavery disorder, okay? And what we got to understand is that a brother who is cultured or a brother or sister who considers themselves conscious are at greater likelihood to be affected by post-traumatic slavery disorder. Why? because the disease that you don't know you have is the worst one to kill.
Wow, that's right, brother. That's powerful right there, man. That is powerful. Let me ask you this here. Why do black men marry white women? What is your understanding of that? Why do you think they do these things?
Yes, excellent question. Number one, I want to refer all your readers to a black psychiatrist who also married a white woman. His name was Frantz Fanon. He wrote a classic text on this discussion called Black Skin, White Mass. I recommend that everyone read that book. It is absolutely necessary. Frantz Fanon, Black Skin, White Mass. No, he was not a Pan-Africanist. He was a Marxist, but nonetheless, I do agree with his premise in that book. You need to read it. To make a long story short, black men marry white women because they want to be white their damn selves. So you have to understand that when the black man chooses the white woman, he is making a political decision about his loyalty and where he stands as it relates to the war of the races. Let me say that again. When a black man marries a white woman, he is making a political decision. He is telling the world where his loyalty stands in the war of the races. The black man marries the white woman because he wants to be accepted by white culture, and he wants to be considered the equal of the white man, and he believes that the only way that he can validate his manhood to a white man is to have the white man's queen. When you look at most of our celebrities and athletes who are married to white women, many of those white women are not attractive, Brother SaNeter. They're not pretty women. The brother didn't marry him because he was pretty. The brother married her because her whiteness was available to him. For example, Lamar Odom of the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yes. Yes,
Lamar Odom of the Los Angeles Lakers married one of the Kardashian girls. Do you know how long he courted her before he wifed her? 30 days. Now, this is a Negro from Brooklyn, or one of the boroughs of New York. Had that same Kardashian girl ran into him 30 days ago and he was working at the gas station or even having a respectable job as a teacher in a public school, she wouldn't have looked at him twice. What we have to understand is that marriage is a business contract, Brother SaNeter. It is an exchange of resources for mutually beneficial purposes. The white woman wants the status, the prestige, and the wealth of the rich black man. And the black man wants acceptance into the white race. I will give you my money if you give me probationary status in your race. It is a trade-off. It has nothing to do about love. How do I know that? Because 98% of all interracial relationships are rich black men and poor black women. It's rich black men and poor white women. So if it is truly about love, SaNeter, if it's truly about love, why in the hell I ain't seen a rich white woman marry a poor black man? Furthermore, we can trace the whole interracial dating phenomenon back to 1967. In a case from Virginia, it was Loving versus Virginia. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court. A white man married to a black woman fought for the right to be married in Virginia because Virginia had still outlawed interracial relationships, marriages at that point. So they took their fight all the way up to the Supreme Court. Loving versus Virginia. L-O-B-I-N-G. Please do the research. In Loving versus Virginia, the Supreme Court decided that it was unconstitutional to prevent a white from marrying a black. From 1967, Brother SaNeter, to 2010, black men have married outside of their race more than the men of every other race put together marrying outside of theirs. Are we to believe that is a coincidence? Hell no. It is one of the manifestations of post-traumatic slave disorder.
Brother, you said something before in the DVD. You said when they become, because you have a friend, or am I getting it right, that's in the NBA that you know, and your friend told you, we ain't got to say no name, of course, your friend told you that before you become a basketball player, they first take you into a room and they educate you on what you got to do and what they expect to. Go into some of that, brother, because that's powerful too.
There is a mandatory orientation. They do it for baseball. They do it for basketball. They do it in the NFL. And I'm sure they also do it for tennis and any other professional sport where you're going to be living in the public eye. And in no uncertain terms, athletes are told that there's certain types of behaviors that can jeopardize your career and success and your ability to get endorsements. Athletes are told, the black ones, not to go back to the community in which you was raised and do things for free to the extent where you start to look like you are a community advocate, because that then makes you political. And once you become a political black man, which means you are conscious, white folks are not going to be as interested in buying your jerseys, your hats, or seeing you play your particular sport. They are told this. In fact, the sports agents are really agents of the government. When somebody says they're a sports agent, or I got to talk to my agent, they're not just saying that for financial reasons, for contract reasons. That sports agent is also an agent of the government, because if their athlete becomes a conscious black athlete, they will be reported to the FBI and investigated. If we go back to the 60s, Brother SaNeter, you remember we had the brothers at the Olympics who raised their black fist. We had Muhammad Ali who spoke out. Black athletes used to speak out for the black community. So the government said, we got to do something about this. These athletes have international exposure. If they continue to speak up on behalf of the black cause, then they might be more effective than the Panthers, Dr. King, and Malcolm put together, because they have an international mouthpiece. So somebody came up with the bright idea and said, let's separate them from their community. Provide them with the woman we want them to marry, and give them enough money. Whereas if they did think about sacrificing for their race, they would see that it would be a long fall down from grace.
All right, brother. Last question, and I'm going to pass it on to my brother, Seville. Earlier in your introduction, brother, to the show, you stated Frederick Douglass. How are you related to Frederick Douglass?
It's interesting you asked that, because our family reunion is going to be held in New Orleans the first weekend in July. Frederick Douglass was not born Frederick Douglass. For those of you who have read any of his three narratives, he was born.
I think it was Frederick Bailey.
Frederick Bailey, that's my family.
There you go. I read too. I study too.
I got you. Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey, born in 1818, Talbot County, Maryland, raised by his grandmother, my great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, Betsy Bailey, who was married to Isaac. They're buried right there in Talbot County, Maryland, with my great-great-great-great-grandfather and mother, Stephen Henry Bailey and Caroline Bailey. Frederick was the daughter of Harriet Bailey. Stephen was the daughter of young Betsy. Harriet and Betsy were sisters, which means that Frederick and Stephen were first cousins. But because Aaron Anthony was the slave master of the Baileys, and as you know, in slavery, they cohabitated with whomever they wanted, including sisters from the same family, the two first cousins became half-brothers because they shared the slave master as Daddy. Stephen marries Caroline, and they give birth to 13 children. The firstborn son is named George Washington Bailey. He is Frederick Douglass's first nephew. He is my great-great-great-grandfather, and he is the first black public school teacher in Denton County, Maryland. Grandpa George Washington Bailey marries Annie Wayman. They give birth to children, one of them named Caroline. Caroline gets married, and she gives birth to a daughter named Vivian. Vivian relocates from Maryland to Philadelphia, and she gives birth to a daughter by the name of Caroline, who then gives birth to Ida, who then gives birth to Jamal. And on August 21st, 1974, North Philadelphia, the anniversary of George Jackson, Nat Turner, and the Haitian Revolution, Umar Johnson is born in North Philadelphia.
right, Brother Seville, you on, my brother. And Tahuti, your line is open. I got the twins on right now, y'all. Brother Tahuti and Seville, your lines is open.
Black Power family.
Black Power, Tahuti, what up?
What's the brother's name that was just finished speaking?
Umar
Johnson.
Brother,
right.
you said a mouthful, and when I get a chance, I would like to comment. Go ahead, Seville.
All right, my first question is this, man. You know, you spoke about from school to jail, man. You know, could you go more in depth in what you're speaking about and what it means?
Okay, can you be more specific with that question? Is there a certain aspect of that?
You were speaking about, you know, going from school to jail, right?
Yes.
So how do the school system prepare the child to go straight to jail once they complete the school criteria?
Excellent question. Excellent question. Understand this. The first statewide prison system in America was created during Reconstruction. Up until emancipation, there was no statewide, or there were no statewide prison systems. Most people were in jails. There was no statewide prison system. But with the coming of so-called freedom, there was the need to create statewide prison systems. Why? Because you had 4 million ex-slaves who would be looking for work, who would not be given an opportunity to earn it, and as a result, they would have to engage in what would be considered by the society as criminal behavior, and as such, will be put into jail. Understand, most crimes are economic in nature. Most times when folks are arrested, it's for doing something to get some sort of a resource in order to put clothes on their children's back, or roof over their head, or food in their mouth. Now, since that time, we also know that the United States government in most of the 50 states look at the reading level. Look at the reading level of black boys in the 4th grade. If a black boy cannot read by the summer of his 4th grade year, there is a 75% chance that he will grow up to be a criminal. That statistic is so predictive of crime that they have been using it since Reconstruction, and it has not been proven to be useless since then. When you look at all the prisons that are being built in New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, California, Florida, and Texas, you will clearly see that when we as a community do not make sure that our boys can read by the time they hit middle school, 9 times out of 10, they will be a criminal. But it gets worse, brothers and sisters. And by the way, let me say this. There is no such thing as a school district of education anywhere in America as it relates to black people. All we have are school districts of incarceration, not SDE, but SDI. Now, it's going to get worse because 26 of the 50 United States have adopted mandatory graduation exams, and I hope anybody with a child is listening to me. In most states, and I believe that includes New York and Pennsylvania, where I live, is the latest state to adopt a mandatory exit exam. Exit exams are tests that your children are going to have to pass in order to get a high school diploma in their state, regardless of what their report card grades were in their local school, regardless of attendance, regardless of honor roll. If you do not pass the tests that are coming from the Department of Education in your state, you will not get a diploma. And the reason why they are using these tests, as I told you earlier in the show, tests are used to justify the political agenda of racism. They are going to use tests to put our boys in prison. So there is a direct relationship between prison and school because the state finances the school and the state finances the prison. And if anybody thinks that any state in this country has any goal for our boys other than prison, I want you to go to your state government website, look up the current budget, and look how much money your state spends on education versus how much money they spend on prison. In fact, in Pennsylvania, we spend 10 times as much on prisons as we do on education. In fact, in Pennsylvania, they are building 4 new prisons as we speak, but black children in Philadelphia haven't had a new school building built from the ground since I was there.
Okay.
Right. I got one more question for you, brother. Simple, man. Now, what responsibility, you spoke a little bit on it, but what responsibility do these parents have, you know what I'm saying, on really going in and making sure that these school systems are actually doing what they're not doing, but what can they do in their household much more better, man, that they're not doing right now?
Well, number one, I would say, what does the community have to do? See, we have to understand that up until crack hit the black community, everything was a community effort. In other words, the question was not just what is the parent going to do. The question is, what are the civil rights organizations going to do? What are the religious organizations going to do? The church, the mosque, the temple. What are the black conscious organizations going to do? What are the block captains going to do? What are the elected officials going to do? Understand, everyone has a responsibility. Now, parents, without a doubt, have to become more strict on their children, and they have to improve the value that they place on education. Many of our children don't even do homework, and we wonder why they're not passing or why they're not graduating. I tell parents all the time, your child don't have a learning disability. Your child has a lazy disability. Let me say that again. The child doesn't have a learning disability. The child has a L-A-Z-Y, lazy disability, that they learn from their parents because they grew up in a household where homework was not mandatory. But you know who I believe is most responsible for this problem? Other than the Negro politicians who we keep reelecting every 2 and 4 years, even though we get nothing from them. And I hope we talk about Obama before we're done tonight. But nonetheless, the black church. And when I say church, I'm not just speaking Christian, I'm speaking every religious group you can think of. The black church has totally failed the black community. You mean to tell me that you got mega churches and churches that got hundreds of members, which means you have teachers in your congregation and you do not have a serious after-school academic enrichment program? You do not have a weekend tutoring program? You do not have a black male mentorship program? Yes, the schools are failing our children. But what are we going to do about these churches and masters who care about nothing but selling Muhammad and selling Jesus? We got children who are struggling and dying, and we ain't doing nothing but preaching some lessons that we got 1,500 years ago. We live now, and our children got to eat now, and they got to be educated now, and we got to start holding our religious leaders accountable to the community. Black churches take in $1 billion every Sunday. $1 billion every Sunday. And they have no accountability whatsoever to the community for how they spend that money. It makes no sense for a church or a mosque or a temple to only be open on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday when we got kids who can't read, write, or do arithmetic.
That's right. Black Paul, let me add on to something right there. That was beautifully said, brother. But I would like to speak from my own experience. This is Brother Tahuti. I absolutely know from my experience that schools lead to prisons. When I was at the tender age of about 8 or 9 years old, I experienced being kicked out of public school, put into a private school where they said that I was ADHD. And at that point, they were giving me drugs. The drugs they were giving me was Ritalin. And from that point on that I started taking the Ritalin, my whole life began to change. From that point on, I started going to Spofford. From Spofford, I went to Rikers Island. And from Rikers Island, I visited the State Correctional Facility. And it was around in that time when I began to really educate myself because I left school at the age of 13. So I only had maybe a 6th grade education, if that. Now, when I did the research on the Ritalin, I found out that Ritalin was actually a narcotic and that it was a cheap form of speed. And I was finding out that most of my peers that went to school with me, they all became drug addicts and they all became criminals. And I started to understand that, shit, wait a minute. They turned us into this shit from the very beginning. You understand what I'm saying to you? So I know firsthand experience that schools is a fast track for black folks to prison houses.
Okay,
Totally
so
agree with
yo,
you, brother.
that right there is proof that the brother is right on point with his information. Go ahead, brother Abdullah.
Yeah, let me say this, because I know you mentioned earlier in the show, and by the way, brother, I totally agree with you. In fact, I spoke to most of that earlier on in the show, that Ritalin, which is methylphenidate, because Ritalin is the brand name. Ritalin is the brand name. The scientific name is methylphenidate,
Right.
which is the chemical equivalent of speed. By the way, Ritalin is classified by the Drug Enforcement Agency of the United States of America as a Schedule B drug. Ritalin is classified by the DEA as a Schedule B drug. Do you know what that means? It means that it is one of the most addictive substances that a human being can consume. In fact, the research shows us that Ritalin, Strattera, Adderall, Cycler, Prozac, and you name it, Paxil, the list goes on. I have them all in front of me right here. Okay, they serve as gateway drugs because one of the side effects of these drugs is euphoria, EUPHORIA, which means getting high. So when a child is used to getting high off pills from the age of 5 to 15, when you stop giving the pills, he has already developed a habit. He is addicted to the chemical. And so once the psychiatrist no longer wants to prescribe the Ritalin, he then goes and gets some real street crack, or heroin, or cocaine, all started by the psychiatrist, all started by the diagnosis of ADHD, all started by special ed, all started by the plan to exterminate our black boys. Miseducation, psychotropic medication, incarceration, frustration, and extermination.
Wow. Right. All right, my brother. That's powerful. Let me go to some of these right here. I got a couple of more questions for you, and then I'm gonna open up the phone lines. Okay, because I know the people, they got some questions for you too. You made a statement on the DVD. See, because I've been watching it, I've been writing down these questions, brother. You said after Obama, we are going to catch hell. Why did you make that statement, brother?
When you study the rise of the black politician, which was by design, Brother SaNeter, after the assassination of Dr. King, during the rise of the Black Power movement, the United States government, in concert with the CFR, decided that they could best pacify black people by a combination of chemical warfare, crack cocaine, and psychological warfare, which meant black faces in high places. That was by design. And when we study the material conditions under which black people live under elected leadership, it gets worse. Find me a city with a black mayor, and I can guarantee you that they're doing worse now than they were under the white mayor. Show me a state with a black governor or lieutenant governor, and I'll show you black folks who are doing worse under them than they did under the white folks. How does that happen? It's because white supremacy can best operate behind a black veil. Now, the reason why our situation is going to get worse after he leaves office, although it's getting worse now, is because black people have refused to hold President Obama accountable. And because you have allowed this white man with a black father who he never knew to treat you any kind of way he wants and ignore you any kind of way he wants, after his 8 years of office is over and the next president goes into the White House, which will be a European, and the same civil rights organizations who are allowing Obama to ignore black people step to the next white president and say, what are you going to do for us? He is going to say, get the hell out of my face, because the last president did nothing and you worshiped him like he was Jesus. So if he didn't have to do nothing for Negroes, I damn sure don't have to do nothing for Negroes.
That's what's up. There you go. There you go. Okay, you also made a powerful statement. You said no child suffers more than a biracial child. I agree with you. I want you to go into that and let the people know what you mean by that. No child suffers more than a biracial child. Why that is, my brother?
First, let me state this. As a Pan-African nationalist and as a Garveyite, a biracial child to us is a member of our race as long as they choose to identify with us. We do not refuse membership into the African race because someone happens to have a white mother or a white father. For example, some of the founding fathers of the philosophy of Pan-Africanism were biracial. John Brown Rushworm, who was probably the greatest Pan-Africanist to ever live before Garvey, was biracial. Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, who was the first black man to say that God was black, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad attended his school while the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was still Elijah Poole in elementary school. He attended Bishop Henry McNeil Turner Elementary School, okay? And before Marcus Garvey said that God was black or that your God should be in the image of your own color, Bishop Henry McNeil Turner said it first. And he was also biracial. And I'm only saying that because there are some brothers and sisters who refuse membership into the race because someone is biracial. That is not Garveyism. That is not the philosophy of Pan-Africanism. I respect people's rights to have their own ideology, but that's not Garveyism. Now, when a biracial child is born into the world, they belong to two competing races. And there are no two races that are more diametrically opposed to one another than the black and the white. Now, you and I both know that if you want to play football and there's two teams that are looking for players, are you going to go to the team that won no games last year, or are you going to go to the team that won the city championship? You're going to go to the team that won the city championship. So when a biracial child is born and they're looking at the race of their mother and they're looking at the race of their father or vice versa, they are going to side with the white race because that is the team that is winning the ball game right now. And until they get rejected by that race, which they will, because remember, in America, one drop can make you an African. But we're talking about somebody who's 50%, so they way past the one drop rule. They are past the one drop rule. These children are tan. They have their kinky hair, the broad nose, the big lips. When their white in-laws and when their white relatives see them, they are not going to accept them. Even though they would have rather sided with them because they are the ruling race, they are going to be rejected and pushed back to us. And then it is our job to accept, nurture, and educate them into the consciousness of who they are. I do not disagree with President Obama because he's biracial. I know brothers and sisters who are biracial who are diehard Garveyite. That ain't the issue. My issue with President Obama is that he is not loyal to black people. So whether you are biracial or 100% black, like Clarence Tom S., I don't care what your mother or your father look like. If you are not loyal to the race, then you are not an African. That's whether you got one black parent or two.
All right, powerful, brother. Hey, the youth today, they're not looking up to Malcolm X. They're not looking up to Dr. Khalid Abdul-Muhammad. They're not looking up to Minister Farrakhan. They're not looking at us, the elders out here in the community, as role models for them. They are looking towards the rappers. The rappers could change the mindset of our people overnight if they were spitting this consciousness because they are following them. They started sagging their pants, so the whole goddamn community now, so-called black community, young boys and women, sisters, are now sagging their pants. They have them so low, brother. What do you think is going to take for a change in hip-hop? Do you think we're going to see this in our lifetime? Because Black Dot, he don't call it hip-hop no more. It's shit-hop. What's going on with the madness of the hour dealing with this hip-hop stuff, man?
Excellent question. And before I answer that, I want to drop my phone number and email in case anyone has any issues with their children regarding special education, mentally gifted, school expulsion, IEP, promotion. If you ever need any type of consultation whatsoever on an issue involving your child's psychotropic medications, ADHD, I will take a look at the psychological evaluation, or I will help you decide whether you need one at all, and it doesn't cost you anything. All you have to do is email me. I prefer that you email me instead of call me because I'm very busy. So if you can email me, leave me your number, tell me what your problem is so I can read about it, think about it, and let me know the best time to call you back, That's how we roll out. Because I get calls from all over the country because, as I said at the beginning of the show, there are not a lot of black male school psychologists. So I'm very busy, but I love doing what I do. Okay, I love doing what I do. So if I can help you, please do call on me. And my phone number is 215-989-9858. That's 215-989-9858. And the email address is my name at yahoo.com. That's Umar Abdullah Johnson. Umar, U-M-A-R, Abdullah Johnson at yahoo.com. You can also find me on Facebook, blackexperts.com, blackspeakers.com, or greatblackspeakers.com. Now, getting back to the issue of rap, one of the things you have to study. Yes, sir.
Hello?
No, go ahead, brother.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Question real quick.
When you look at revolutionary behavior or the history of revolution in America by black folks, you will always see that the powers that be have always sought to control two things: the music and the movies. Why have they always been interested in controlling the music and the movies? Because psychologically speaking, if you do not know this, that you can program the memory and the unconscious of a human being or an entire group much more effectively through music and movies than you can by direct instruction. That's why most of us can memorize songs that we didn't even know we was listening to in one day, but it might take us 2 weeks to prepare for that test we got to take next month. So the powers that be have always been interested in controlling music and movies because it can wake you up better than anything else. Why do you think you've never seen a real movie on the Garvey movement? Why have you never seen a real movie on the Nat Turner insurrection? Why have you never seen a real movie about the transatlantic slave trade? And I'm not talking about Roots, because a real black movie that truly portrays the black experience will have the insurrectional power and ability to wake us up out of our coma. And for that very reason, Brother SaNeter, whether it's music or movies, the United States Congress has a committee which must approve every movie that Hollywood puts out. They are so afraid that if the right movie slips through, it may electrify that militant black revolution that J. Edgar Hoover has been trying so hard and others after him have been trying so hard to suppress. And it's the same thing with the music. If you want to get rich in the music industry, okay, you must sell music that denigrates and destroys black consciousness and culture. It's the only way you can do it. If you are positive, you will not have the access to the airways unless you make a commitment that you are going to self-publish and promote your music yourself. And to be honest, I think the only way we're going to be able to reverse this trend is to go back to the days where we are selling our own music out of the back of our cars. That is the only way it's going to work. You cannot go to the major labels and expect them to promote a powerfully conscious rap album. It ain't going to happen. Tupac was assassinated because he was politicizing black gangs in L.A., and they killed Tupac before he even had a chance to put into action his plan. So much more so for the rest of us. Negro rap, or what I call genocide music, will always be the order of the day until black people, particularly rich black rappers, decide to come together and create their own distribution company. Distribution is the problem, Brother SaNeter. It is also the key to the issue. Because we don't market, promote, package, ship, fly, float, and drive our own products around the world, we are at the mercy of Jewish distribution networks.
That's right, my brother. Powerful. All right, what I want to do now is take some callers in because I ain't got that much time. So I want to get a viewers some time out there to ask a question, my brother.
I need to ask one question real quick, SaNeter, real quick. Brother Umar.
Yes, sir.
Is there any recourse for families whose children were victims of the Ritalin? Has there been any major lawsuits or anything of that nature?
There have been a few, but the drug companies have successfully suppressed a lot of them. And the reason why they have been so successful at suppressing class action lawsuits against that are filed on behalf of children who have suffered detrimental side effects, including death from these drugs, is because the drug companies who make $38 billion a year off doping black boys, let me say that again, $38 billion, I didn't say million, I said $38 billion a year off of doping black boys, are also the #1 funders of the American Psychological Association. They are the #1 funders of the American Psychiatric Association. They are the #1 funders of the National Research Council. In fact, good brother, the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, is one of the most criminal agencies in the government. Why? Because many staff and administrators in the Food and Drug Administration, who's supposed to make sure that your child is not taking a drug that can harm them, have stock interest in the same drug companies that they are supposed to be protecting you from. So let me ask you a question. If you are an FDA administrator and you know that there's this drug that they want to give to black boys and you know it's not safe, but the minute that drug goes on the market, you stand to make $5 million overnight, are you going to approve it or are you going to reject it in the name of saving black boys?
All right, my brother. All right, what I want to do now is go to the phone lines. Area code, make your question, have a question. And Brother Johnson, try to hit so we can move on. All right, brother?
Got you. I got you.
All right, area code 516881. State your name, where you calling from.
Press the button.
Area code 516881. State your name, where you calling from. Okay, he probably walked off. Area code 267592. State your name, where you calling from.
Yeah. This is Yakub Ali. From Philadelphia.
Hey, Brother Yakub. What's happening?
Yeah, what's going on, Umar? I attended your organization that you had over there on Lehigh. I think it was 29th of
Yes,
Lehigh.
sir.
I was up in there with Brother Kareem. Yeah, I want you to get, my question is, I wanted the number, but you gave it to me already, but my question is about, like you said, on your documentary, you were saying that the scholarship program was controlled by, you said, Latinos and homosexuals, and then you were saying, like, how the black college, how homosexuality is going rapid in the black colleges. Elaborate on that.
Yes, sir. I will definitely do that. Number one, what I said was that the entire civil rights struggle under President Obama has been reduced to homosexual issues and Hispanic issues. Also, under President Obama, under the new health insurance law, which also includes the higher education bill, money that used to exclusively go to black colleges can now go to white colleges who are interested in recruiting Hispanics. This sellout Negro Obama is allowing people to take black money from black colleges and give it to white colleges that are teaching Hispanics. And I take issue with that. Now, as far as the homosexuality on the black college campuses, it is out of control. And the reason why the black colleges can't do anything about it is because homosexuality has become the chief civil rights issue of the day. In other words, if a black college says that they are not going to accept homosexuals, then they can kiss all their federal and state money goodbye. So as a result of that, they are forced to accept cross-dressing, hand-holding, kissing, okay, transgendered youth. Okay, it's going on in Atlanta. It's going on with the two historically black colleges, the first two up here in Philadelphia with Lincoln and Cheney. They are taking over the universities. In fact, I gave a lecture at Cheney University a few months ago, and 3 cross-dressed African-American brothers walked in with pocketbooks, blouses, high heels, and the same thing is going on down south. And what we have to realize is that most black colleges, and I respect them because they did what they could with what they had, but they were all started with white land grant money. There are few black private schools. Most of them were started with handouts from white corporations. For example, Spelman, which is an excellent university, but it was still built and financed by the Rockefellers and named after the man's wife. So what I'm saying is, as we move through the 21st century, we have to start financing our own black schools. That is the only way we're going to be able to control the socialization process. Black people believe that you can take money from your enemy and do what you need to do. You have to fund your own movement.
Hola.
Yo, who that? Who that speaking? Okay, let's go to area code 407-234. State your name, where you're calling from.
Peace. This is Kufu, one Umar down here in FLA.
Peace, Black Power. What's up?
Peace, Black Power to you too. Hey, I wanted to ask the brother, like, all right, because I know when I got to my when I got to my last year in college, right, it was like I was studying humanities, and then when I got there, they brought this course out called the History of Psychology. And then what bugged me out is like when I get to the final year, that's when they hit you with all the information showing where they try to give credit to the Europeans about, you know what I mean, with the history of psychology. And I brought forth the issue with the citations and the reference showing and proving that all that information came out of Africa. And when I took it to the board, they was like, they wasn't trying to hear that shit. So I'm like, what resolution or what kind of solutions do you got for situations like that?
Okay. First of all, beloved, I want to encourage you to go back and get your master's degree in school psychology because we need more black male certified school psychologists. And if you're interested in that, please send me an email or give me a call. That's for anybody who's listening. I don't care if you're young or old. If you're interested in being a school psychologist, please get with me. I can't be a one-man movement. I got to train brothers and sisters all across the country to advocate for our children. Number two, you are absolutely right. Sigmund Freud, who is the Jewish father of white psychology, went to Africa where he stole and copied the spirituality of the mystery systems of ancient Kemet. In fact, if you ever look at a photo album of Sigmund Freud, you will see that his office looks like it would have been the office of Naim Akbar or Amos Wilson or Wade Nobles because he has the statues of all of the Neteru of ancient Kemet. It was from studying the symbolism of Kemet that he created his philosophy of psychoanalysis, which is nothing but the philosophy of the unconscious that our ancestors gave us. In fact, Carl Jung, who was second only to Sigmund Freud in prominence of European psychology, also went to Africa and studied the spirituality of the symbols of ancient Kemet. And from that, he came up with his theory of the archetypes, or the collective unconscious. That is a African concept. So without a doubt, all sciences, not just psychology, are ours. And one other thing, SaNeter, that I forgot to mention earlier, if your child is having homosexual ideation, the last thing you want to do is take them to a homosexual therapist. Why? Because Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, Alfred Adler, and most of the fathers of white psychology viewed homosexuality as a natural process in the development of a man. If you take your black child to a white therapist with homosexual issues, they're going to come home gay.
Hey, am I still on? Because one of the issues that I really had with this book is called Introduction to the History of Psychology. One of the issues that I had in the book was that a lot of these white dudes that they were saying was like the father of this or the father of that. When you look at their character, one of the guys, I can't remember his name, that they was wanting me to believe was like this real father of modern thinking and shit, was like they said he would just fart in public, that he would piss and do all type of nasty shit all in public, showing how he was just a savage, and that they was seeing that as like that was a good, they was in the book and in the teachings that was a good thing. That I don't know, I couldn't understand how they was trying to teach us that this savage was really like someone for us to look at as a good source of real thinking and shit. You know what I'm saying?
Well, one thing that I don't want you to do, one of the mistakes we make as African people is we try to prove to Europeans who we are and what they are not. Our learning and our education is for the uplift of the community. Europeans are not going to do anything differently if you prove to them the accuracy of your facts. We have to stop wasting so much time trying to show them who we are. It ain't about them. It's about us. Let's teach our children what it is. And if we really believe the truth of our nature, it will manifest in our behavior. You don't judge a person by what they say. You judge them by what they do. And that is why we look like a bunch of contradictions in the conscious movement, because we have all the theory and all the books, but no progress has been made.
Powerful, powerful. Teach. Moving right along. Area code 914-447. State your name. Where you calling from?
Wow.
914-447. Area code 610-802. State your name. Where you calling from?
It's Bashir Haq from the Bronx, New York. Assalamu alaikum.
Peace, walaikum assalam.
I got a 2-point question that I would like to ask. The first question is, what would we say would be the given the condition of our people that we know the state that we are in, what would be the solution that you would advise that our people must implement immediately? And 2, I believe that the moral standard and code of Islam would develop that nature, and why or why not would that not assist our people in their development?
Okay. Excellent question. Number one, let me deal with the religion piece first. I want to go right back to Garveyism, right back to Pan-African nationalism. Keep the religion separate from the political movement. I respect all of the black religious nationalist groups. I got a great deal of respect for the Nation of Islam. I have a great deal of respect for the Moorish Science Temples. I have a great deal of respect for the black Hebrews. I got a great deal of respect for Christian nationalists and Muslim nationalists. But black people have too many types of psychological ailments to be forcing people under one religious umbrella. If you make religion an issue within the political movement, it then becomes another tool of division, which is why the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey never ever chose a religion to go with the Universal Negro Improvement Association. They tried to force him. Members of the Garvey movement wanted him to declare Islam as the religion. They wanted him to declare Christianity as a religion. Marcus Garvey said that is the job of the masjid. That is the job of the church. This is a political movement. We have to stop mixing politics with religion. Black people belong to too many different religious communities for us to try to force them all under one. All religions come out of the ancient African spiritual systems of the Nile Valley. So it does not matter which one you choose, because they'll all get you to the right place if you follow it accordingly. Political movements must stay political, and that's one of the reasons why I had a great deal of respect for El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, Malcolm X, was because he had the wisdom to create Muslim Mosque Incorporated for his Islamic agenda and a separate organization of Afro-American unity, taking it back to Garveyism. We must keep them separate. Okay, we must keep them separated. Okay, the movement shouldn't be Islamic. It shouldn't be Christian. It shouldn't be Kemetic. It should be political.
Powerful right there, man. I couldn't have said it better, man. That's real right there. Okay, all right. We got another caller here. Area code 1111. Private number. State your name. Where you calling from?
Hey, yo, this is Jerome from North Carolina.
What's going on, Jerome, from North Carolina?
Hey, what's happening?
Hey.
What's happening, brother? I got a question for my brother. Okay, I wanted to mention in Africa, the Herero in Namibia, who were, the women were forced out into the wilderness, like 18,000 of them been raped. Now, that was done under the Germans. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because the brother was talking about the Germans' eugenics movement. And actually, in the Cape Verde Islands, they actually had something called whitening. In Brazil, they had something called whitening. Okay? And how do you connect that with what's going on at this particular point in time insofar as you talking about the NBA players and the rampant number of black men marrying white women? That's the first question. The second question is if at the time, at the end of the 18th century, when most of Europe was in starvation, and in the 1900s, we had more than 1 million black farmers, and black farmers were basically feeding the United States and other countries as well. And Granville T. Woods was one of the premier electricians around the world. How is it that we got to this particular point? And is this a long stream of warfare against the African American, and what reaction should the black man have?
Okay, good questions there, brother. Starting with the first one, I wasn't totally clear on it, but I am familiar with the extermination of the Herero peoples in Southwest Africa, Namibia. In fact, the leader of the resistance movement there was a Garveyite, a brother by the name of John Chilembwe, who actually was later assassinated and martyred by the Germans for the work in which they done. Now, as far as those extermination movements relate to what I'm talking about today, I think they're just all part of white supremacy's program to exterminate black people. See, what we have to understand, we basically had about 5 periods in our history in America. Okay, we had the pre-enslavement period, when Africans were already in America or freely trading back and forth. Some were Moors, some weren't. Not everybody was a Moor. Okay, but you had the pre-enslavement period. You had the enslavement period. You had the Reconstruction period. You had the Garvey movement. You had the Civil Rights period, the Black Power period, and now you have the Black Extermination period. What's going on now is worse than slavery. In slavery, you were treated like an animal so you could be used for the benefit of the society. Today, you are no longer needed for the benefit of the society. They have 4 million immigrants to do your job. So now the entire agenda is extermination through police brutality, HIV, okay, and mass imprisonment. You don't put people in jail when you have jobs for them. You only put people in jail where you no longer have a need for them. What's going on now is an extermination of black people. Global 2000. The goal of Global 2000, I believe that was under President Carter, was to reduce the population of black Africa by 50% by the year 2000. In fact, by some estimates, they say that if the HIV and Ebola rate in Africa does not slow down by 2055, it may not be a black African on the continent. Now, you and I both know that once you take out the mothership, all the little babies that are scattered around the earth, it's just a matter of time before they go away. And that is why we as Pan-Africanists say that the only solution to this problem is Pan-African nationalism. Religious nationalism can't do it. Jesus and Muhammad ain't got a damn thing to do with our struggle. Marxism can't do it. Integration can't do it. The only thing that is going to solve the problems that face black people is Pan-Africanism, and to be more specific, Garveyism. We have to link up operationally with black Africa. What black people in America gross $850 billion a year. $850 billion. That makes us the richest black group on the face of the earth, the richest black nation. It also makes us the 10th richest economic power on the globe. There's only 9 nations that gross more money than blacks, and they're not black. What if we invested that money into Africa? Zbigniew Brzezinski, Barack Obama's undergraduate advisor at Columbia, who created the Trilateral Commission for the Rockefellers, he said out of his own mouth that the greatest threat to the New World Order is for blacks in America to link up operationally with blacks in Africa. The only solution is Pan-African nationalism.
Man, I agree 100%. So, brother, in closing, we got like 6 minutes left. What I need you to do, brother, is take us home, give us some of the solutions that we need for these problems that we are facing today, brother. Take us out of here.
Number 1, education. Black people, I know we are in a rush to get started. We are in a rush to struggle to fix the problems through which we suffer. But understand this. If we move out without a clearly articulated plan of action that is well thought out, that is informed by a thorough analysis and understanding of the problem, we will be wasting lives, manpower, resources, and money. One of the biggest problems we have in the black community is that we are too impatient to sit down and study the situation before we move out. And the reason why we have to study the situation is because most of us don't have the slightest idea of what we are up against. Educationally, if anyone out there needs parents to be educated, I do free workshops on educational law, special education procedure, for free. All you got to do is give me a call, shoot me an email. I will come to New York, and we can get the training done, and it doesn't cost you a penny. I am not in this to pimp it. I am in this to uplift the race. What if Harriet Tubman charged every slave she helped free $100? None of them would have never got free. So this is not about pimping. It is about helping, okay? Too often, we allow black capitalism to look like black activism. Let me say that again. We are letting black capitalism be disguised as black activism. Capitalism ain't got a damn thing to do with activism. Now, the second thing we have to do is study. Study the great ones. You got to read philosophy and opinions, and you have to study all the Pan-Africanists before Marcus Garvey. You got to study African colonialism. You have to have a thorough understanding of slavery. Why? Because in studying slavery, you come face to face with the African-American Negro mind. Studying the slave narratives will give you exactly why we are as we are. Lastly, brothers and sisters, you cannot solve problems by adding to them. There's a lot of player hating going on in the conscious movement. Okay, there's a lot of negativity in the conscious movement. You have to rise above it and move past it. If a brother is hating or if a sister is hating, be man enough and disciplined enough to ignore it and keep on working. Our families are dying, our sons are burning, our daughters are losing, and we cannot afford to be getting involved in an ego clash when the house is on fire. Understand this. Understand this. We cannot change our external environment until we change our internal environment. There cannot be a political or economic revolution until there is first a psychological revolution. If black people do not change the way they think, then any other change we attempt to bring about will be wasteless and futile. If you built a black supermarket tomorrow, black people will still be shopping at the white one. So before we make any material changes, let's first change the way we think. And if we're going to change the way we think, we got to change the way that we treat one another. I'll leave you with a quote from the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, and he said that the most powerful defensive weapon in the reach of Negroes, the most powerful defensive weapon in the reach of Negroes is the practice of race first in all parts of the world. Race first is about looking out for your race first, not your religion first, not your Masonic lodge first, not your fraternity first, not your clique first, not your school first, not your job first, but race first. If we practice race first, we're going to be all right.
Brother Johnson, the people already begging for you to come back, man. They said you got to bring this brother back, man. So will you be able to come back, brother? I mean, of course not this week, but it could be probably next month. We don't want to, we want the people to miss it. And then you got to come back for us again and do another show. Or whenever you're ready, brother. Whenever you're ready, we can do it again.
Whenever you give me the date, I'm ready. But also, Brother SaNeter, I want to come and do a lecture in New York. PowerPoint lecture. I got my own equipment. We just need a building. We ain't even got the charge. We just need a building. But I want to come so the brothers and sisters in New York can feel their brother and see the information live and direct with all the resources so there's no questions left unanswered. I want to come in the flesh.
I got you. That's what we're talking about. All right, Brother Seville. Brother Johnson, I want to say peace and power, my brother. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, now, peace and blessings. Thanks for having me.
All right, peace, family.